for his part in a string of bomb threats to a Jewish community center. That's one story. Turns out he has St. Louis ties. Turns out he's from St. Louis. Turns out the Riverfront Times knows this guy pretty well and did a cover story on him last year. We've got Doyle Murphy, reporter for the Riverfront Times, here in studio. Good morning, Doyle Murphy.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
You know this Juan Thompson. How shocked were you when you found out that he was behind some of these threats around the country?
I mean, the tie to the threats is bizarre. I didn't see that coming, but it's you always seemed like there was something probably going to happen with Juan. I mean, it just seemed like he was kind of going in a really bad direction.
Tell us about the article a year ago, the cover story in the Riverfront Times about this Juan Thompson.
So we had picked up, it was just kind of a national story at the time, St. Louis guy in the news, and he had been fired from a pretty good job at The Intercept, a national news site, for making up sources. There was people that he quoted who The Intercept then went back and couldn't, they talked to and said, I've never talked to that guy.
The website, Intersight, also has ties to Eric Snowden, doesn't it?
Right. That's kind of their big claim to fame. Glenn Greenwald is one of their big guys. They've got a cache of documents that Eric Snowden leaked to them.
And so he was fired from this website for making up stuff.
Right.
And he's from St. Louis.
From St. Louis.
He also started terrorizing you, didn't he?
That's what I believe. A while after writing this story, and then a quick follow-up story, started getting attacked by these like fake Twitter accounts, and they were anonymous, but it started to kind of like fit that same pattern that I'd seen with Juan before. And then I started comparing notes with one of his old roommates who was also being attacked. It got bad enough that we went to the police, talked to them, and before I could even say who I thought it was, I just described what was going on. I said, does this have anything to do with Juan Thompson?
The police said that to you?
Yeah. Which surprised me in a way, but then I realized that they were already working on an investigation that ends up being kind of the base of this this federal charges of him cyber stalking his ex-girlfriend.
Right. So he was arrested here in St. Louis.
He was, yeah. I mean, despite his Twitter account that kept saying like, oh, now I'm in Detroit, now I'm in Senegal, now I'm in Cuba. I'm pretty sure he was just here in St. Louis all the time. His family tells me that he was picked up at his grandmother's house early Friday morning.
Sounds like he's somewhat mentally unstable.
I mean, I'm not a doctor, but it didn't seem normal to me.
Right.
That's for sure.
He's 31 years old. Was he running for mayor?
That was kind of one of the weird sidelines is all of a sudden there's like a GoFundMe pops up with Thompson for mayor, and he's promoting it on his Twitter, and he's got like his 10-point Thompson plan. He never filed any paperwork to run for mayor, as far as I could tell. I mean, he was trying to like raise money. Whether he planned to actually use that to run for mayor, if he was just trying to get money, I don't know. Right.
So now that he's arrested, you're sort of the reporter. You hate to be part of the story, but you can't help it. You're sort of part of the story. Were you worried that he was out on the streets? Were you not worried? What do you feel now that he's been arrested?
I mean, I do feel relieved. It's a strange situation to be in as a reporter. But yeah, I mean, my wife and I were nervous when a lot of this was going on, because he seemed like he was doing most of his stuff just online, but I mean, you never know with people.
Yeah. So he was arrested for making threats at these Jewish centers all around the country, right? It wasn't just here in St. Louis.
I don't know that any of them were in St. Louis. It was mainly New York. I called in like one to San Diego, and there's one more. But basically, what's alleged in the court documents is that he was trying to frame this ex-girlfriend who was in New York. So I think a lot of this stuff centered around areas where she would potentially be doing this.
Right. Was it a copycat crime? Did he see these threats at these Jewish centers and decided to sort of create this other universe for his own girlfriend, or was he part of the plot, or do we have any idea?
Yeah, it seems that FBI believes total copycat kind of crime of opportunity kind of thing.
Right.
He's only accused in 8 of them. There's over 100 nationwide.
Right. And he's got nothing to do with the cemeteries that have been vandalized.
I've heard that they're going to look into it. I'd be really surprised. I mean, if you were trying to frame someone in New York, you're not going to go topple cemetery headstones in St. Louis.
How did they finally catch him?
That I'm not as clear, but in the last few days, he was kind of amping up this attack on the ex-girlfriend online, and he would tweet it, say at Secret Service, things like that, which tends to get you some attention from federal authorities.
Yeah, but he was arrested here in St. Louis at his grandmother's house.
Yeah, he's in St. Louis still. They're set to have hearings on Wednesday to remove him to New York, but he's still here in the area. What
a bizarre story. He was arrested on Friday. It was national news because of these Jewish centers that have been a target of bomb threats. He's not the bomb threat guy, but as you said, a copycat or somebody who was using it for his own benefit to somehow frame his girlfriend. But Juan Thompson was a cover story of a Riverfront Times. What was that, last year?
Yeah, almost exactly a year ago.
And Doyle Murphy, reporter for the Riverfront Times, was in the midst of this sort of bizarre story as a reporter and as somebody who was terrorized by this guy, right? I mean, you and your wife now sleep better?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a crazy weekend hearing from all sorts of people that didn't know any of this stuff was going on.
Because you couldn't tell anybody about this stuff, right?
Not really. I mean, it wasn't like I would to go around saying hey, there's this weird Twitter accounts accusing me of horrible crimes and stuff. Especially it was all kind of ambiguous,
right? When he was finally arrested, how did you find out, and what went through your mind when this Juan Thompson was finally arrested?
Yeah, I was driving into work and I had a text message from my boss. It's call me ASAP, and Colin's just you're not going to believe who was arrested in these JCC bombings. And I really had no idea.
Right.
I was oh my God.
What a bizarre story. All right, all of that is at RFT.com. You've got the original cover story, and then you have some follow-ups at RFT.com. Doyle Murphy, good to have you safe and sound, and great job reporting on all this.
Thank you. I really appreciate having me on.
Doyle Murphy, reporter for the Riverfront Times. What a bizarre story. 726, we'll do numbers next. Big 550.